So we're continue with our study of arrays. We did some kind of parsing on Monday. And so we took some big long string and we took what's known as a delimiter, and we broke the big long string up into things based on some delimiter. So I chose, I think, sometimes a hashtag, sometimes an ampersand, sometimes a vertical bar, comma is a common one. I tended to have some descriptions, so my descriptions tended to have commas, so I haven't used a comma, but a comma is a very standard delimiter separator. Okay. What I'd like to do today is to take some long string this time and to split it up into individual characters. So if I use nothing as the delimiter, it will break it up into an array of individual characters. And then we can, we'll do something with that array. So again, another split, but this time no delimiter or you know, a quote delimiter, and it will turn us into an array of characters. And then let's like do some frequencies. Let's count the number of times we had the letter A, the letter B, and then if we have time, do some statistics on that. What was the average? What was the standard deviation? We'll see how far we get. Okay, so a little bit more splitting, maybe some statistics. All right, so here we go, new page. I don't want to be in any folder. I'm gonna get out here, start a new page. And I'll call it letter stats or something. .html and exclamation and letter stats and letter stats. Okay. You want to just have some string that we process, or do you want to let the user enter some string that we will process? You want it to be user? What's that? Get the user enter. Okay. So I'll have a label that says enter your text. I'm going to have, say, maybe a break, because I'm going to make it a text area. And then I want to get what the text from the text area. So that's going to be the, I'll call it TA stuff. I don't know. And I'm going to give it 60 calls and I don't know, 8 rows. I don't think I'm going to type that much, but there's stuff. And then once I have an ID for the text area, then I can come and do my for the label. Okay. So I have a place for them to enter some text, and then we'll say hit some button. And then we'll have a button to I'll say letter frequency analysis. We'll have them do analysis. There we go. And give that an ID. Why not? Button analyze. And got my quotes in the wrong place. and give it an on click. And I'll say analyze. So then what do I want? Maybe some div for some results. And start a script area. And what did I say? Analyze. So I need a function called analyze. Okay. And the first thing I need to do is to get my text that I want to analyze. Okay. So here we go. What? I'll call it user text equals document get element by ID. What did I call it? TA stuff. And I want its value, which I can't spell value. And then let me alert that. And then we'll stop there to see, not for good, but stop there for now and see if that's working. I don't like to write too much of the function before I test my function. Okay, so open with live server, blah, blah, blah. Frequency analysis, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So I'm getting off of the page what I put into what the user put into the page. Okay. So far, so good. Okay. Now I want to take their text. I want to, what do I want to do? I want to take their text and I want to make all the letters either all capital or small. I want to sort of count the letter, how many times A appears in the text, called a frequency analysis, but I don't want to worry about the difference between little a and capital A. So I'm going to try to capitalize everything. So, not popping for me, but let me try this. toUpperCase. Sometimes it's toUpper, sometimes it's toUpperCase. And let me bring this back, but put it after this. See if that worked. All right, so I wanted to put everything into capital letters. So I say, hello there. And now it's all capitalized. Okay. Now, there are some options at this point. One approach, if you're only interested in letters, one option is to try to get rid of everything that's not a letter and be left with only letters. So like if I said hello there, get rid of that space. Another approach is to go and split it. And then when we are doing our analysis, just to ignore anything that's not a letter. So do you want to try to get it down to just letters before we start our analysis, Or do you want in our analysis to ignore the things that aren't letters? Before we start, you would like to try to get rid of the letters. So that is a replace. So we would like to replace the stuff that's not a letter with nothing. That will get rid of it. Okay. Making my life. I made my life hard. You just picked one of the ways to make my life hard. Okay, so we want a replace. We want to replace anything that's not a letter with nothing, and then we will have, okay. So let's JavaScript, and we want to do a replace. Let's see what W3 Schools has for us here. It's doing some replacing. Okay. So you say something, you have a string, then you say replace, and then you say what you want to replace it with. And then we have to do some fancy stuff. See what we can do. All right, so let's try to say user text is equal to user text dot replace. All right. Now I'm going to try to replace everything that's not a letter with nothing. Let's see how we can do this. Okay. So we want something like this sort of slashy thing. And then what do we want to slash? Let's try to do the opposite first. Let's try to replace everything that is a letter with nothing. So let's see if this works. And then, so let me add another alert. Down here. All right, so let's see what I'm getting rid of. So I saved, here I am. I'm typing some letters and some non-letters. Okay, what happens? I capitalize all my letters. That was my first thing. And now I'm going to try to, right now, I think maybe, hopefully I'm getting rid of letters. So I should be left with a semicolon and a space and maybe the 490,4937.
Why do you put the G?
G is for global. He made me do really fancy stuff. Blame him. Okay. I am doing what's called a regular expression. So instead of looking for something particular, instead of saying, I am looking for a space, I am looking for a quote, I'm looking for a pattern. So the pattern they are looking for is, and then the G in a replace means every time, replace it globally. So if we said here, down here, Mr. Blue with a capital B, that may be different, has a red house and a red car. So it found it didn't find the capital B blue because we didn't say anything about case sensitivity on this page, but they did say all the blues you find globally replace with red. Let's see if we get rid of that G. What happens? Now that I got rid of the G, it replaced the first blue with a small b with red, and then it stopped. The G says keep going and replace all the ones you find. Okay. So that was question worthy. So that is, so we are using replace. So if you did something like that, what would you do? You should, that's not what I want. This is what I want. If you were doing something like this, then you would like to paste a URL of what you were doing. How did I get here? What am I doing? And we are doing what's called a regular, I can't spell, regular expression replace. And that means we're looking for a pattern rather than a specific thing. And the G means global. Global. Make all the replacements you find. Okay. It's bigger. Let me save it. Let me get rid of my Explorer. Okay. So we wanted to replace, we replaced. We wanted to get rid of a lot of stuff. So instead of looking for every individual little thing we wanted to get rid of, we worked with this thing known as regular expression, which finds patterns. And our specific pattern was anything in the range A to Z. So that's what we want to keep, not what we want to get rid of. So we're getting rid of, right now we're getting rid of any capital letter. Now I'm going to come in inside my little square bracket and I'm going to put a caret. And that's going to say the opposite. Let's see what that does. Stuff, capital letters, all sorts of things. Okay. And now I would like to capitalize it all and then get rid of the stuff, hopefully, that's not capital letters. There's just capitalization, and now I got rid of all the stuff that was not capital letters. So the square bracket A to Z was a set of things, all the letters in the range A to Z, and this is anything not a capital letter. I can't spell capital letter. All right. So the user typed yada, 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 yada. We capitalized it all because we don't care about whether it's a small a or a capital A. And we got rid of everything that's not a letter. Now we're ready to split it into individual letters. And so what do you want to call this? Text split. Okay. And this was going to be an array of individual letters. And I'm going to get that by taking the user text and splitting it. We know what split does. It breaks something based on a delimiter, but we're going to use no delimiter. And then, should I just try to alert it out? I think it'll throw all commas between everything. If I just say alert an array, it's probably just going to show me it with commas in between. Let's see. What did we just call it? Text split. So a split without a delimiter should break me into individual characters. Typing, capitalizing, getting rid of everything that's not a letter. And now I broke it into individual letters. And if I say, show me the whole array, it just slaps what? It slaps a comma between them. And what's a comma? A comma is a standard delimiter to put between them. Okay, but I have now a bunch of individual letters. Now, what do I want to do with these letters? I want to start counting. This is known as a frequency. How many times I got A, how many times I got B, how many times I got C. Let's start off with a loop to loop over. Let's just walk through this array. I equals 0 because array started 0. I less than. And that's an interesting question. Am I walking through the letters or the possible letters, or am I walking through the letters in that I got from the user?
I think it's safer to use the from the user.
Okay, so
let's say, for example,
so if we're going to walk through the user's letters,
use text split length.
Then we use text split dot length. Because we may have, when we are done, two arrays, and one will be sort of the frequencies of possible letters, and the other one will be the letters that the user entered. Now, after I did my replace up here, I'm only going to be left with Roman or whatever they are, my alphabet. I don't know what the right word is. But right now, we are walking through the characters that are left here. So let's just say, let's do a console log. I don't want to cancel a bunch of alerts, but I'm willing to look at a console log. And text split is an array. And I want to look at individually the elements of that array. So that is what? Text split I. When I'm talking about the whole array, it's text split. When I'm talking about an individual element of the array, it's text split I. So I type some stuff. And I do my letter frequency analysis. And it's all now in the console. And there are my individual letters. S, K, F, M, yada, yada, yada. Okay. So now I would like to say, have something that's going to count the A's, count the B's, count the C's. I want to count how many times each letter occurred. So I want a different array, not an array of characters that the user puts in, but I want an array that corresponds to the first element will correspond to how many times A occurred. The second one will correspond to how many times B occurred. So you need to make me an array. And before we start counting, all of the elements should be 0. So we want an array that starts off with 26 zeros. There's another approach of this. I still would need an array for the counting. I would still need an array for the counting. There's a different approach where I could, if I had an array of the alphabet, if I had an array which was A, B, C, D, then I could walk through that array. I could take the user string after I've capitalized it. And I could replace the letter A with nothing. And I could see how big the string was before that and how big the string was after that. And that would count for me how many A's there were. So there is an approach to this problem where you have an array of the explicit letters A, B, C, D. And then instead of taking the user string and walking through it, we would walk through the letter of potential. So there is such an approach, but we've already started down a different route. But for either of those approaches, we want an array that counts how many times something occurs. So I need an array of frequencies. There will be 26, and they should all start at 0. What should I do? Okay, I need to declare an array. Back up to I can declare it. If I'm going to do anything other than hit this analyze button, I could declare it up here in case I wanted to know it for other things. But if I'm going to do everything in analyze, then I would declare it here. Okay. I'm going to call it freak. Said frequency, I probably misspell it, so freak is enough, at least for me to know that it's a frequency. I want to say then it's an array. One thing I can do, and I want them all the values, because frequency is for counting, and if we were counting something and you were declaring the counter, you would start the counter at 0. When we're adding, when we're counting, we tend to start the sums or the counters at 0 and then start to count from there. This is going to be 26 counters. That's what an array is. It's just a collection of related things. So this is going to be 26 counters. So I have to set 26 things equal to 0. One thing I could do is this. 26 times. That's one approach. Or I can write a for loop and do it in a for loop. What do you want? For loop. Okay, good. And I think there's an even fancier, like one line way than I don't know off the top of my head that just says fill this thing with 26 zeros. So if you Google it, you can probably find it. But I'm just going to go with the for loop. Good practice of for loop. So for let I equal 0, I less than 26, or this alphabet, the Roman alphabet or whatever it is, and I plus plus. And I want every element of my frequency array to start at 0. What do I type? Frequency I equals 0. Take all of the elements. I'm looping through them one by one. I have my I going from 0 up to 26, not including 26. And I'm saying the 0th element is 0. The first element is 0. The second element is 0, all the way up. Okay. So now I have that. Okay. All right. So now I want what? So now I have letters. I have like a letter. I have a letter A. I want that to, if I came across an A, then I want to increment frequency 0. If I come across a B, I want to increment frequency 1. Do we remember how to turn a letter into a number? We did it once. He made me do it. It was it was like car code or car. Where are we at? It was one of these car code. That's just our car code at is the code is going to give me a number. So this is going to give me the character code at H, which was apparently a 72. Okay. So what was it? Text, then car code at. And I already broke it up into letters, which is probably overkill. Car code at 0, the first. So I already went through the letters individually. Now I'm going to show you their character codes. Let's see how we're doing. I don't know, the quick, brown, fox, I'm already tired. A, B, C, D, E, F, okay. So here are the numbers corresponding to the letters. Here's my last A, B, C, D, E, F. So I'm walking through, I got it so that it was only all capitals. I got it so that it was only letters. I split it up, so I'm going letter by letter. I now have the numbers corresponding to the letters. A is 65, but if it's 65, I want to increment frequency 0. Don't want you to tell me about an if. I don't want you to tell me about a switch. but I want you to tell me how, if it's 65, to increment frequency 0. If it is so if the letter, I'll just say the letter, is A, which is 65, then increment frequency 0, because that was the first one. Square bracket. Okay, if it was B, if the letter was B, which is a 66, I want you to increment frequency 1. I want you to tell me how to do that. And I don't want an if, and I don't want to switch. What should I do? How do I get from 65 to 0? You subtract. Yeah, exactly. So I can say frequency thing minus 65, that was the A, plus plus. I find the letter, I get the individual letter, I turn it into a code. I subtract 65 from that code, so now A corresponds to 0, which lines up with the indices of my frequency array. And so then I can increment my frequency array. Outside of the loop, I'm going to console log the frequency array. When you print out an array, it's going to give you commas. So do I have my frequency array? AAA, BB, CC, stuff. I don't know. I added some stuff in there. There is 3 A's. There were 4 B's. 1, 2. Yes, there are 4 B's and 2 C's and other stuff randomly in there. I am counting the letters that occurred in my text. I know you learned how, when we did ifs, to have like, if it's this, do that. If it's this, do the other. If. But when you have arrays, there's sometimes you can get away from all those ifs. You don't want a bunch of ifs in your code if you don't need them. All right. So now I have some frequencies. I have some things I want to begin to do some kind of statistic. What's the first statistic I'm going to do? The repeating letters are the frequencies. Yeah. And I'm going to do statistics on the frequency most common. Yeah, okay, so that would be the max. He wants to know the letter that occurs most frequently. Okay, so we're not going to worry about highs or anything like that. We're just going to find at least the maximum. Okay, so I have to walk through my frequencies, look at each one. So I know I'm going to need a loop over my frequencies. So that is let I equal 0, I less than freq length. I don't want to use 26. He uses a different alphabet. Sometimes I use 26, but I want to use 26 as seldom as possible. So that if he changes the alphabet and he's got more letters or fewer letters, he doesn't have to go through all the code, changing it to 26 all the time, only once. So we're walking through. We actually once saw this before when we had the horse race. And you can say that the maximum frequency before you start, I'm going to say let max equal 0 and let max index, and just say let max index. I'll say it's equal to -1. Which is a ridiculous index. There is no -1. But I'm going to walk through all my frequencies, and I'm going to say if the frequency, if frequency I is bigger than the max I have so far, make it the new max and make its index the max index. Then there's another approach that we'll talk about, but this is for now. If frequency I, freq I, is greater, do we want to say greater or greater than or equal? Depends. Do we want, if there's a tie, do we want it to be the earlier one or the later one? Doesn't really matter. Let's just say greater than. So if the frequency is greater than max, then it becomes the new max. And that I is the maximum index. So I walk through all of my frequencies. I have a max, which is set low at 0. And I say, if my new frequency, as I walk through my frequencies, if that frequency is bigger than the max, then make it the max and remember what index it had. And then let's add that. Finally, instead of console logging, let's put it into div results. Document, get element by ID. Div results has inner HTML. And what do I want to say? The maximum frequency is max. With an index max index. And we could add our 65 back and turn it back into a letter, and I'm too tired for that. I'm running out of time. But let's just see if we find out which letter occurred the most often and find the max and the max index. Okay. So what am I going to do? I'm going to type in something that I know the answer to: AAA, BBBBBBB, CC, DD, E, F, G, H, TJ. Okay. So it should be those B's, which would be an index of 1. So there were 7 Bs. Were there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Bs with an index of 1 or an INDA of 1, apparently. Index of 1. All right. We could do the smallest. That would look quite similar. We could do the average. What was the average time a letter appears? What was the biggest letter? What was the we can sort them and put them in some order. We'll talk about that another time because that can get a little bit funny, and I want to have the time to show you all the little nuances of putting them in order. But so if we wanted to do the minimum, what do? If you want to do the maximum, you start it absurdly low. If you want to do the minimum, you start it off absurdly high. So you'd say like 99999, and then you would turn this greater than into a less than. So if you wanted to find the minimum, sort of copy this, make the starting max very big so that it gets replaced right away, and turn this inequality around the other way. And then you would find the minimum. And if you wanted to find the average, we know how to calculate an average. You would sum up all the frequencies. We've summed up things over and over again. We've summed them all up and divide by the number of frequencies. Divide by 26, divide by frequency dot length. Each got a different alphabet. All right, so we did some statistics, not a lot of statistics. I might come back and do more statistics. I still have to tell you about radio buttons. And another thing we have to do is searches. How do we search for something in array? So at least one of those things we will do Friday. All right. Any questions for the recording?